I'm Sheriff Kieran, Donahue, Canyon County. Beside me is Captain Bill Gardiner from Idaho State Police. Last night, we had a officer-involved shooting here in Canyon County. Basically, this call was a disturbance call from a residence out on east side of Middleton on Highway 44. A single officer was the first to respond to the call. Upon getting to the residence, our officer was confronted by a male subject with a firearm. Early indication is that the officer encouraged the person to lower the firearm or put the firearm down. More information will be developed through the investigation. Ultimately, the officer did fire multiple rounds, and the subject was struck. Once the subject went down, the officer immediately holstered up and attempted to provide medical treatment, CPR and first aid, and was shortly joined by another officer who had arrived on scene to assist in that process of rendering first aid to the victim. Unfortunately, the wounds were fatal, and that victim passed away at the scene. In a case like this, it's a standard in the Treasure Valley to pass the case on to the Critical Incident Task Force. And in this case, it will be Idaho State Police who will be heading that investigation. Obviously, the Canyon County Sheriff's Office will not head that. We'll defer to Captain Gardiner and his team. We're fully cooperative with the process. We're very familiar with the CITF. We are a full partner here in the Treasure Valley. And of course, we support our officer and his family. We'd of course ask for privacy as normal in these types of cases for the officer and his family. And as normal, that officer has been placed on administrative leave pending the investigation and other parameters. So that process will continue to take place. We're still investigating the case from our perspective, and along with the coroner and the coroner's office, and of course the crime lab here in Canyon County and the assistance they've asked him. With that, I will turn the microphone over to Captain Gardiner. As I say, this is a Critical Incident Task Force operation, so Captain Gardiner.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning. Again, my name is Captain Bill Gardiner with the Idaho State Police. I'm the district commander here in this area. I want to echo Sheriff Donahue's comments. While this is never an easy process when an incident like this occurs, it's one that we take very seriously. The Critical Incident Task Force here in Canyon County is made up of multiple agencies, and the purpose behind it is to ensure that there is an impartial investigation that takes place whenever there's anything this high profile. Agencies that are currently helping with the investigation include the Parma Police Department, obviously the Idaho State Police, the Nampa Police Department, the Owyhee County Sheriff's Office, the Caldwell Police Department, and the Homedale Police Department. We all take an active role in investigating this and taking any leads and following through with those leads, but it will be the Idaho State Police that does take the lead and in all the investigation. We want to make sure that it's done properly, we want to make sure it's done right, and that it has an impartial tone to it as well. Are there any questions at all that I can answer? Please.
Do you know if the subject threatened the officer in any way?
Again, we are very early. We're just a number of hours away from when the incident occurred, but there are indications, yes, that the officer did feel a threat and responded according to his training to that threat.
You said that there was like a disturbance, that was what the initial call was for. Was there like yelling, or were the shots fired inside the house?
What we understand is that there was a domestic dispute at this particular residence, and the officer and the sheriff's office had received a call to that, and that's what the officer was responding to, was a domestic violence dispute.
Do we know if the weapon was loaded?
Obviously, you're referring to the weapon from the subject. His weapon did contain rounds in it, yes.
Are you guys releasing any names or the age of the victim?
The victim, his name is Brandon Rapp. He's in his early 30s. His next of kin has been notified. Again, our heart certainly goes out to all of those who are involved, including the Rapp family and to the officer that was involved in this incident. This is not easy on either side of this.
How do you spell his last name?
R-A-P-P.
And so did he live at the home where this happened?
This was his residence, yes.
Was there anybody else in the house?
It was a domestic dispute, and so yes, there were other individuals there.
Were there children in the house?
There were children, yes.
And how many?
2.
Is it common for agents to know CPR and respond in such a way?
You're referring to the deputy that was on scene?
Yes.
Yes, it's part of their basic training that they receive. They are CPR certified, and much of that training, when the threat is gone, you then immediately go to render aid, which this officer did.
Do you know if there have been any other issues at that home or with this Mr. Rapp?
That would be a question for the sheriff's office, and if they've ever dealt with those things, but we're specifically focusing on this incident here.
Was first contact inside the house or outside the house?
Outside the house.
Outside?
Please.
So did the man approach the officer when he was outside? Obviously they met outside. So did the officer even make it to the door?
Without giving too many details, because again, we are right in the middle of this active investigation, the incident did occur outside, and that's where the confrontation took place.
Is there any indication that Mr. Rapp was under the influence of alcohol or anything else?
And we look at that as part of the investigation as a whole. That's one of the things that we're waiting to receive back from a toxicology report on what specifically was in his system, and so we'll certainly reach those conclusions when the report's finalized.
Was the officer wearing a camera, or are you guys reviewing any type of video of some sort?
The officer did have on a body camera, yes. Yep, and we are, again, that's a critical piece of evidence that we're evaluating.
Can you say what move made the officer defend himself?
Well, Mr. Rapp did have a firearm, and so again, without getting too much into specifics, we're still analyzing the video that was involved with it, and so until that's completely been analyzed and the conclusions have been made, I really don't want to comment on those kind of specifics today.
Can you say if he pulled the gun or point the gun, or what made him?
The officer certainly felt a threat.
Did you already talk about this officer and his experience with as a deputy?
Sure.
This officer, thank you for the question. This officer's been with us, been on patrol for 2 years, roughly 2 years, been with us a little longer than that, about 3 years plus. So experienced officer, and in our opinion, obviously we're going to, as the captain has said, we want to make sure we fully vet the process and make sure that it's done adequately and correctly. But the officer is trained in these situations, as in the medical CPR, and they stay current. All of our officers stay current in that to render aid in any type of situation.
Was he the only one on the initial call?
Well, he was the first to get to the call. There were multiple officers en route to the call, but he was the first to respond, so responded there, arrived there first.
Is the officer on paid or unpaid leave?
He's on paid leave, paid administrative leave.
Well, we have you up there. Can you comment on that address and the victim as to their history with their interactions with you?
Just limited. We've had some limited calls to that establishment, and at least one of those calls was a domestic violence issue for the history.
Can you comment, did he fire his weapon, the suspect?
Right now, as Captain Gardiner said, we're still, their team is still gathering information. Reports are still coming in from all the people involved, and so those details will be worked out, but right now we're waiting for the full analyzation of the information before we can comment. And then one thing I will comment too, obviously the prosecuting attorney is represented here by the Chief Deputy Criminal, Chris Topmiller. As this case goes forward, obviously there will be a conflict of interest between the prosecuting attorney's office and the Canyon County Sheriff's Office, but the reports that the captain and his team will put together will be first submitted to the prosecuting attorney's office in Canyon County to make sure everything is adequate, and then it'll be sent on through the conflict process to another entity to review for any type of charges or conclusion of the investigation.
How long do you think that will take?
Captain Hart?
You know, it's always difficult to try to pinpoint a time frame on this. We don't take anything for granted. We want to make sure that we look at everything. I think we owe that to the community, to the sheriff's office, to the Rapp family, and so we don't rush it. And so it takes as long as it takes.
Can you say how many shots were fired by the officer?
Again, that's one of those parts of the investigation that I do not want to comment on. I'd like to be able to give you conclusive things that we have information on, but that's part of the investigation at this point.
Was the officer injured?
No, the officer was not injured.
Was anybody else injured other than the subject?
No.
I know that you had stated that, Sheriff Donahue had stated that they'd had multiple run-ins, that they responded to that house. What was his criminal history? Had he been picked up before?
Well, part of that we're reserving. I won't comment too much on that. We were not there. We get called because there's a disturbance, obviously, and of course we respond to see what happens. And unfortunately, a young man lost his life, and we're sad for that and feel for that family. And I think, as the captain has pointed out, we just continue to make sure all of the case is done adequately and carefully so that all parties are represented equally.
Was it a neighbor that called you guys, or was it someone inside the house?
A call came from the house.
Did the officer or the officers who responded know that there was a firearm before they got there? Was that part of the call?
To the best of my knowledge, they were not aware of that. That was not in the call comments. But as you can imagine, officers called to a disturbance are a little bit heightened, aware, as this is their job, they know the dangers, and they've responded to cases like this in the past in other places. So obviously the officer went in with, in my opinion, acting accordingly to be on guard. We just don't know. Any type of case we get, any call, whether it's a burglary in progress, whether it's a domestic violence in progress, whatever the call is, a disturbance of any kind, all of our officers are immediately have a heightened awareness, and that's really what we're trained to do, and comes by nature that we just don't know what we're stepping into.
I will say this, Sheriff Donahue and his staff they're working very closely with us. They've been very helpful. I think they have the same goal that the rest of the members of the Critical Incident Task Force is, that this is evaluated impartially and fairly. Any other questions, please?
Sorry, I know that you said Rapp was in his early 30s. Do you know what his approximate age was?
I don't have a specific birthday. Early 30s is what I can give you. I know that's accurate. Anything else?